Hi there. This is Brad Feakes with the EstesGroup, and I'm here with Jeff Steinecker of Slimstock. Now, Slimstock, they focus on inventory optimization for a variety of industries, including the distribution field. And EstesGroup is going to be doing a summit of partners in the P21 world, integration partners who work to produce products that help elaborate and enhance the P21 world. Slimstock is one such solution that helps P21 customers with optimizing their inventory levels. And in our world today, with the supply chain disruption and such that we've had, that's a really prescient issue. So Jeff, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate having your time with us. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your company and how it works within the distribution industry?
Yeah, great, Brad. Thank you for inviting me to expound a little bit on who Slimstock is and what we do. To kind of outline what Slimstock's all about is we actually do help companies better optimize their inventory and purchasing as well. So I'll kind of, as we go through this conversation today, hopefully I'll give you a better idea exactly how that all happens within the software. We are a software company. We're be celebrating our 30th anniversary next spring. We've got about 400 employees around the globe. We are a global company supporting our customers with their requirements around the globe. We just celebrated our 400th employee, so we're excited about that because it takes us to another league, if you will. But basically what we do is we help companies plan their inventory at multiple locations and provide them the visibility across the supply chain to make sure they have the right stock at the right place at the right time. Okay, in a nutshell. Okay, we are the science behind inventory management. Okay, now when you look at the P21 and all ERP systems for that matter, they're really good at managing the physical aspects of the inventory. Well, we don't worry about that. We worry about demand planning and forecasting and making sure that we're buying right and have the inventory optimized where I need it. Okay, so it's a whole different set of planning tools, a whole different set of mentality when we start looking at those aspects of the inventory.
Sure.
Especially with the investment requirements that have been happening here lately. So,
Oh, sure.
but as we go through today, hopefully you'll get a better idea too how we can help you visualize your supply chain much better, as well as provide you the tools in order to really buy right and make sure you have the right inventory in stock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'd say with my customers, both in manufacturing and distribution, the idea of inventory as the pandemic was looming. We had this would have been February, March of 2020 when I was still visiting customers, and we all kind of felt like there was something on the cusp, but we didn't know how big it was. And I'd ask, my customers what they were doing. And I had one customer there, we're pretty good. We did a lot of forward buying, so we should be okay. I don't think they were planning at the time that the impact, the ripple effects of the pandemic would be this long felt. In terms of what you guys have seen, what are some of the most significant changes that have come out during the pandemic, and how have you guys had to react to those?
That's a good question, Brad. I mean, when you really think about it, we were kind of caught surprised as well, but we're used to dealing with events like the Chinese New Year and how you take that into consideration when you're buying forward, et cetera, and planning your inventory requirements. Excuse me. We basically saw the market move from a just-in-time inventory to a just-in-case inventory. Now, as that whole ripple effect's slowing down, we're going to see a lot of people with too much inventory, or we call a long tail factor. Okay, so what we're trying to do too is giving our customers the set of tools that they need in order to strategize, come up with a strategy for how we're going to deal with the inventory, whether it be a overstock situation or understock situation, and then give them the tactics to work with those. Okay, the good news is by us looking at their inventory holistically, we're able to help point out all these exceptions that they need to deal with on an ongoing basis, so that from an efficiency perspective, my eyes on the ball, it's not on the whole playing field. Okay, and the tools themselves allow them to react quicker. Okay, it's all a matter of understanding what the strategy is going to be going forward, the appropriate tactics to make that happen, and being able to see whether or not it's working. Okay, if it's not working, change the strategy or change the tactics. So we bring a whole portfolio of different capabilities to the end users to make those decisions on a quick, very easy to use basis. Okay. I don't know how to say it. I've been in the software business for 45 years, and Slimstock has one of the easiest to use tool sets that I've ever seen in the industry. Okay. People love it. They levitate to it because it is so much easier to use, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Okay. And that's really kind of what we do. We do the mathematical modeling, the algorithms, and all the scientific heavy lifting of the mathematics behind inventory control, and we provide it to you in a very easy to use methodology that actually says, wow, this is great. Because one of the statistics we found out, Brad, in researching the inventory of the new normal, et cetera, is about 80% of the clients or prospects, if you will, for a tool like Slimstock don't have real understanding of the mathematical models behind it. They just simply reorder point or min maxes, et cetera. So part of our culture as a company is helping them not only understand that, but teaching them more advanced methodologies to accomplish the job in a much easier manner. Okay. Let's put it this way. In talking with a lot of my clients, the stress levels associated with COVID-19, the whole struggle everybody's been in for the last 2.5 years, has been enormous. Okay. It's taken its toll on a lot of organizations, a lot of people. And what we've tried to do is step up as our customers' partners and say, hey, we're going to help you through this process. Okay. I had one customer down in Texas that basically distributed a product, and instead of, they sold it to bars and venues and other kinds of stuff, it's beer. Okay. But as COVID, with all the shutdowns that happened, they immediately had to revamp their whole product line. Instead of selling kegs, they had to sell 6-packs and 12-packs and cases. Their sales went through the roof. But the good news is they reacted very quickly to those changes and were able to look at the inventory and say, okay, we're stopping here. We're doing that proverbial, what's the word called, where they switch real quickly. Pivot. That's a new term in the inventory control industry. But pivot and get into a whole different concept of their business, and bingo, they not only survive, they thrive. But the good news is, as the economy starts shifting back to the old methodology, they're in a much better position to look at what were we selling prior to COVID and what should we be selling going forward if those trends continued with a certain percentage of how do I say it, growth and increase. So the interesting thing is we give them a complete tool set and we teach them how to use the tool set, but we also take them and teach them even more about the inventory philosophies, the 80-20 principle. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, but a lot of people don't get it. So we supplement the functionality of something like P21, and P21 is not in that boat by itself. Just about every ERP system doesn't do a real good job at demand planning and forecasting and then executing on that. Okay. I've been in the ERP business for 30 plus years and nobody did it very well. Okay. So we are what we call a best of breed product. We basically are focused on doing those aspects of the business very well. But to answer your question, the whole concept of moving and pivoting real quickly, we've had to help customers figure that out. Okay. But the good news is when you have 400 people behind you that have a lot of more brain power than I have, they figured it out and were able to help customers react quickly. Okay. Now, as we're looking at the new future, what that future is going to be, we're not sure yet. But as it happens, we're going to be in a position to help our customers implement whatever it is quickly. Okay. Nice. So that's kind of our whole goal, is to reduce those stress levels.
Sure.
Okay.
No, I could definitely feel that. I think across the industry, the stress levels have been in the inventory space for procurement and inventory. The people who are trying to get the right products in to support either their distribution needs or their own internal manufacturing needs have been immense. And I like the idea of the transition from just in time to just in case. I think I've seen that as well, where inventory forever was almost viewed as an enemy in a just-in-time world.
I guess the good news is too that as that happened, money was so cheap. Okay. It's not so cheap anymore. Now we're looking at 8% interest and plus holding costs and everything else. I mean, everybody's figuring out how can I free up that working capital that's stuck in inventory.
Right.
So, that's our whole charter, is help them figure that out and do it in a way such that one of the things that's also interesting is as we look at the procurement side of the inventory equation, a lot of that really mental stuff's not written down anywhere.
Hmm.
Okay. So one of the tools that we built into Slim 4, which is what our product's called, it stands for service level inventory management. And there's really 4 steps to it. Okay. In that process, we're trying to help customers document all that tribal knowledge in the system so that as time goes on and guys like myself retire, somebody knows what to do and
Right.
how to do it. Okay. So it's a novel idea, but we build it into the software.
Sure. Sure. So I've seen an interesting trend kind of in that just in case world where I see companies are downsizing their office space because workers are increasingly being remote. So the need for office space is reducing, but the need for inventory warehouse space is increasing. What have you seen there in that trend? And do you see that sort of reversing itself yet, or is that still ongoing?
Well, that's an ongoing situation, but let me, I guess, just say that one thing that we've tried to do is help customers delay the additional space requirements for warehousing by managing the inventory better. Okay.
Mhm.
If I can eliminate the stuff that I'm not selling, then I don't need that much space. So
Right.
we've had a lot of customers over the course of time that have deferred additional space requirements by optimizing the inventory and the use of that inventory. I mean, there's a simple Pareto process of the 80-20 principle, right? Well, when we go into an inventory organization and we do a real ADC analysis on their items and tell us how much are they selling and how frequently are they selling them, it's amazing what we can really tell them. Now, the good news is a lot of ERP systems do an ABC, but it's very static. It's a very one-time shot. We're
Mhm.
doing it dynamically. So every time we do another update, we're telling them if there's any change in that ABC calculation so that all of a sudden I can deal with a product that I'm not selling anymore. Maybe I have an opportunity to sell it. I sell it at a little bit better discount, if you will, to get rid of it rather than having to take up all that shelf space. But
Sure.
one of the things that I noticed, I should say, is we were able to help companies transition to a virtual workforce a whole lot easier. Okay. What I mean by that is we as a software company are basically software is easy to be a virtual company. Okay. So we have practice doing that. But we were able to help our customers do that too, with people moving from the office environment to home to do the inventory planning, to do the purchasing, and you don't have to physically see the items on the inventory. Okay.
Mhm.
P21 is going to tell me, here's what I have in stock. Well, what I have to do is it the right stock? Is it in the right place? And how can I move it to get it to where the customers need it and stuff? So we give you a whole bunch of very easy to use tools, browser based, so that guess what? It's again like I said earlier, it's not rocket science. I can sit at my desktop and see all these exceptions that I need to manage and get it done today. And guess what? I can still make it to the kids' baseball games and stuff.
Right.
Okay. Actually, as I've talked to some of our customers, they were able to defer additional people when they bought Slimstock and put it in. They were planning on bringing on additional headcount, but because of the efficiencies they pick up, excuse me, typically 40% efficiency gain is how do I say that? They've managed a 40% improvement in their efficiency of the buyer's time, the planner's time, and that creates a economies of scale so that in this one case they didn't have to hire 2 people that they were planning on hiring. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's very easy to cost justify a solution like Slim Stock. Okay, because the ROI is in less than a year.
Mhm.
It's very apparent the efficiencies are gained. Okay.
Right.
But again, we're doing all the heavy lifting. We're doing all the mathematical modeling. We're doing all the algorithms. We're checking all this stuff, not just at one time, but typically every day. We're informing them, here are issues you need to deal with. Okay.
Got it. So
But
let's shift gears just a bit here into the
sure.
idea of lead time. So I've seen one of the things that flummox my customers tends to be shifting lead times. So lead times fluctuate. And then I see customers doing things like trying to secure forward buys and try to, block capacity before they actually know the discrete components that they're going to be purchasing. What does your software normally do to try to address that kind of fluctuating lead time world in terms of predicting when to purchase or trying to lock capacity?
Brad, that was a perfect setup question for a sales guy. Okay. Lead time is a static number that typically comes from the ERP system, and that lead time is originates from the vendor. Okay, so the vendor is telling me, oh, the lead time for these items is 10 days. Okay. Um, what we've done is we've built in a dynamic lead time calculation methodology that every time we do an update, we're going to measure the actual lead time.
Mm.
So anytime you as a client want to see, here's what I have in the system, the book of record being P21, and here's what Slim 4s calculate to be based on real stuff. Okay. From the time I ordered it until the time I received it, my docs. Okay. That's the dynamic lead time. And what we've been able to do is continually keep an eye on that. If you have 30,000 items in your inventory, we're looking at those every day, telling you, hey, this isn't coming in yet, and the lead time's not accurate anymore. You need to either change the lead time or expedite this order somehow because it's not working.
Mhm.
But typically what we do is, I mean, there's so many different aspects to safety stock calculations and committed inventory calculations. There's other types of safety stock too that we call it, but we have all these different kinds of different stocks. But the main ingredient of being successful with the inventory is having the correct lead time.
Mhm.
Lead time impacts the inventory values based on how long I need it in inventory to cover how long it's going to take to replenish it. Okay. So it's really interesting because as COVID happened and the whole transportation mess started appearing, our customers could go in and either by vendor or for all the items for a vendor, change the lead time that was something more appropriate. And boom, instantly it was changing the ripple effect through the purchasing side saying, you need to buy more. Okay.
Mhm.
Now we're seeing the lead times catching up. And as they go in and adjust the lead times, they're saying, okay, now you don't need as much. So back off
Mhm.
these buys. Um, Lead time also would lead me to create an exception which says, hey, you can't get more of these in time from your standard supplier. Find an alternative source.
Mhm.
Okay. And fill the gap with that alternative source until it's time the lead time straighten out or the other shipments arrive. But last thing you want to do is have a stock out situation where a good customer goes somewhere else to buy that product
Sure.
because chances are they might not ever come back.
Right.
Okay. The same
Yeah.
thing within the bills of materials and the ripple effect is there. Okay.
Sure. Sure, I imagine. Now, I've seen an interesting trend, and maybe this is, in my own anecdotal experience, a little less prevalent than it was maybe a year ago. A lot of customers are familiar with the idea when speaking from a purchasing standpoint of minimum order quantity. What I see some vendors doing is kind of flipping that, is that the vendors themselves, from their most often offshore suppliers, are getting reduced quantities. So they're forcing themselves to kind of apportion and ration product to their own customers. So I see what you might call a maximum order quantity, where they don't allow one customer to kind of gobble up everything and leave everyone else dry. But for each individual customer now, they're forced within a new kind of scarcity model. Has Slimstock had to address any of those kind of maximum order quantity scarcity models, or has that been something you guys haven't seen a lot of?
No, we've seen quite a bit of it, quite honestly, especially when you think about what we can do, we can not only when we're dealing with stuff coming across the pond from the Pacific Ocean, let's say from Asia, excuse me, we can go as far as consolidating those purchases to a container as well. So we've been able to look at it from a standpoint of how much capacity does that vendor have to provide this product. Now let's face it, if we're in a partnership with that vendor, the vendor is going to say, Jeff, I have to limit how much I can give you. The capacity that we can provide you is X. Well, I can measure that, track that capacity against my purchases. So I know how much I can go and how much I'm going to have to go elsewhere for.
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess it's pretty straightforward question, but if you can get the answers from the vendor, which hopefully they could, I can figure out, do I need to buy it somewhere else? Or based on my lead time changes, do I really need that much in the first place? It's really looking at how do I best serve my customer, okay? And how do I use Slimstock to figure out where's the best place to source it from, okay?
Mhm.
We try to do the heavy lifting there. I mean, when we start looking, you mentioned earlier lead times, it also takes into consideration the buffer stocks, the safety stocks, the insurance stock, the committed stock. I mean, we're taking all these different attributes into consideration and telling you what you need to be buying right now. But we're
Mhm.
also looking at, where is my inventory that I've already bought coming across the pond? Is it going to be into the DC real soon? Or if it's going to be a couple days late, maybe there's a way I can call the vendor and get an air shipment of a couple items to make sure I don't have that shortcoming. Okay. But dealing with commitments from vendors and restrained amounts of inventory, yeah, we have minimum maximums. We got all kinds of things built into the software, but typically the minimum order quantity was a big number.
Mhm.
And one of the things we've tried to get customers to understand is negotiate that number down so it's not so risky for you, okay, as a client. And
Sure.
then you got the minimum order quantity, and then you've got incremental order quantities that you have to fulfill. And if you can help them lower those gates, be more respective of the customers, your vendor's capacity, then it's helping with that partnership, okay. But again, I think every time we suggest a buy for our buyers, it's looking at possibly multiple alternative sources as well, okay. We're going to tell you the economics behind each one of those buys and tell you whether it's a good buy or not, but you may have to suck it up, if you will, and buy some at a little higher price in order to cover any shortfalls you might see coming down the road. But Slim 4, our product, will tell you, here's what the shortfalls look like and give you a complete planning horizon.
Mhm.
I don't
Nice.
know if I answered your question or not.
No, yeah, yeah, it does still seem to be very much a big challenge in the industry. One other kind of somewhat similar challenge I see has to do with inventory. I guess sales quite often will see inventory as this necessary thing they need to have. Cost accountants will look at it a little bit differently, and they'll be seeing, well, we can afford to support this much total inventory value given our cash flow requirements and such. Have you seen cost and kind of overall inventory valuation as a constraint that you need to work around when planning individual buys?
Um, yeah, I mean, we can help them with that. I mean, that's not typically the driver. The
Mm,
driver really is looking at what's my demand look like for that item, and
okay.
can I support that incremental investment that I'm asking the CFO for?
Mhm.
And chances are, because I have 5 years of sales history and I have confirmed orders already into the demand plan, I can see, hey, look, yeah, we need an extra $50,000 right now in order to fulfill these, but here's the margin we're going to make off of that if we in fact make that investment, et cetera. But like I said, it's an interesting time because who wants to run the risk of losing big clients?
Sure.
Nobody.
Mhm.
Okay. So what we try to help customers also focus on is, how much capital do I have tied up in stuff that's not selling? And
Mhm.
let's unload that somehow. Let's get rid of it and free up that working capital. Okay. And then don't let it happen again. How do we do that? By looking at all these exception messages on an ongoing basis and making sure that the minute a item goes into no sales for the last 3 months, somebody's doing something about it.
Sure.
The sales department's getting a flyer from me saying, hey, get rid of these products. We don't close them out. It's a closeout sale, whatever. Find an
Right.
alternative source to unload it, but get it out of our inventory and free up that cash. Okay, that's
Sure.
the best way to manage the inventory.
Right. Right. When I was looking at your the title of your presentation that Slimstock will be giving on the 30th, it was called "Supercharging Your P21 Inventory to Get Ready to Handle 2023." So I blinked and we're almost into 2023. So what would you say about looking forward to the next year? What does the future hold for inventory optimization? Any significant challenges out in the distribution world as it relates to the optimization of inventory that you could anticipate?
Well, I can't really speak on my own perception, but Slimstock's perception is the fact that companies are continually looking for best of breed tools like what we have to offer in order to make their forecasting more accurate, to make their tactics that they deploy and the strategies that they put forth more workable. And let's face it, as we get the generational changes that happen in distribution, we want to give these younger people the tools they would expect to have to make their jobs easier, more efficient, and more fun.
Mm,
Okay. Um, None of us are necessarily used to dealing with what we've had to deal with in the last couple of years. Okay. Like I said, I've been in the business world for quite a while, and none of us have ever seen these kinds of issues, if you will, that we all had to react to and deal with. The good news is there are tools like Slimstock out there that help you manage those processes and those tactics much easier, but it's all really make your jobs more fulfilling, learn more. Okay. I think all of us have a responsibility to make sure the younger generations are learning as much as they possibly can,
mhm.
but they don't want to necessarily go to universities to get that. We've stepped up with our academy and developed a course of products or a course of educational products that allow them to learn more about inventory control methodologies, tactics, strategies, etc. Um, so that they don't have to necessarily enroll in APEX classes to get some of this rudimentary stuff. We're going to teach it to them themselves, but we also teach it to them in using the product, which really helps them embellish it at their own company and be successful using the product. So I think it's kind of interesting. We've stepped forward and said, hey, we're going to not only give you a good product, but we're going to make sure you know how to use it.
Right. Yeah. Always easier to learn those industry standard techniques when it's with your product and your dynamics. All those things get cemented so much easier for sure.
What we find though is it's a ripple effect, Brad. Once people get into using the product, they tell their friends tell their friends, and it's our biggest opportunities are from somebody that changes jobs and goes to another company, and then he used Slimstock before. The phone's going to ring.
Right.
Yeah, we know that for a fact. So uh, we're also trying to get people to understand there's a concept called service level management, which is a different measurement of how how many times do I want to make sure that, or what's the percentage of I want to make sure the availability is in stock for an item when a customer calls says I want it. Okay. And what we've done is use service levels to manage the complete inventory process, which again, it's a whole different set of metrics. But what it does is say for my A items, which would be my top sellers, I want a 99.5%, let's say. Okay. And the other AB and AC or BB and BC, we set it up in a grid of the ABCs. It allows me to define in each grid component what that service level should be. So we take all the thinking out of it and it really just makes so much more sense. And instead of looking at all the attributes associated with what's making these things happen, and we're dealing with the fact that we don't want them to happen anymore. We don't want anything to get into a CC, if you will.
Sure.
It's a slow mover. But anyway, I'm digressing here. I'm sorry.
No, no, it's
we've,
exciting
we've
stuff.
got a lot of tools for a lot of companies to figure out how to do things better. Okay.
Right. Right.
Um,
No, that's great. And I really look forward to talking with your team on the 30th about that. And so, Jeff, I just want to thank you again for your time today. Really looking forward to your team session on the 30th. For our audience, Slimstock will be presenting at Estes Integrate 2022 event on November 30th. Their session is called Supercharging Your P21 with Slimstock and Be Ready to Handle 2023. It'll be November 30th at 4 o'clock. And Jeff, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you, Brad. We appreciate the opportunity, and I'm sure if somebody tunes in for the actual presentation, they won't get a sales answer. They'll see the thing will work.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day.